So namaste, everyone. Welcome to Satsang this evening here. And seems like a long time since we did Satsang, being away. Just checking that you can hear me okay. Thumbs up or down. Good. Thank you. Satsang for this evening, I really wanted to go into something in the Awakening Together session that I did last night. There's something that came up a couple of times that is worth going into again in a deeper detail, because it's something that really is very important. It's something that is a huge part of our awakening. And it kind of goes something like this. I've had a deeper seeing. I'm starting to recognize what I really am. And somehow, suddenly, all these emotions, suddenly all this stuff in my mind is suddenly coming back up stronger than it was before. Or we might find that certain parts of our life just really aren't working. For me, it was like after a deeper seeing had happened, that my life just suddenly seemed to get turned upside down. And this was the opposite of what I was expecting, the absolute opposite. I had this idea that once I had recognized, begun to see what I actually am rather than what I thought I was, then all of this stuff would calm down. And it was completely the opposite. Even before a deeper seeing had occurred, even just the intention, the desire, the desperation to wake up to the truth, all of this stuff just started to come to the surface. So I really wanted to take some time today just to look at why that's happening for us and how to work with it as well, because it took me a long time to figure that out. And when I learned how to work with it, the whole thing became much faster and easier and smoother. So most of us, when we've had some kind of seeing, that doesn't have to be a big revelation. It can just be I'm sitting in meditation, I suddenly feel a bit peaceful, or I feel contented, I feel a deeper level of silence. Because you are being that truth that you really are in that moment, what's going to happen then is everything that doesn't agree with this new understanding of what you really are has to come up to be looked at, to be challenged. And what that is in our experiences, I'm getting deeper into the silence, the stillness, the consciousness in my meditations, in my self-inquiry. And then it seems like the rest of my day, all this stuff is just being triggered inside me, and I might even feel like I'm going backwards. I might even feel like I'm losing ground of what I've seen. So I want to look at why that is and what we can do about it. So first thing I want to say about that, if you're going through it right now, and every one of us probably is, every one of us had some emotion or something happen in our life or some thought pattern play again that our mind says should not be occurring. This, if I've had a deeper seeing of what I really am, or I'm starting to understand that clearer, starting to figure out that all of my thoughts about myself are not true, and about everyone else, in fact, are not true. Why then is suddenly my mind coming up with all of this stuff? It's like it's just saying, hey, here's all the stuff. I'm just going to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. That is because your allegiance has changed inside. Your identity, what you love, what you are devoted to, has changed from unknowingly being devoted to continuing this idea of being a separate being, to this deeper devotion growing, this urgency, this have to get there type of feeling for awakening to the truth of our being and living as that. So our identity, what we know ourselves to be, is probably not fully resting yet in, I know I'm infinite and formless and everywhere, but it's certainly not where it was before. You can't fully believe that we're separate, alone, isolated, and that everyone and everything else is completely, it's something we have to interact with. There's a separation between me and other beings and other things. So in this kind of halfway, not fully identified as a separate being, and also not fully convinced yet of my formless infinite nature, the mind and the emotions and our life experiences then can be very traumatic, very turbulent. For me, I was absolutely convinced I'd done something wrong. I had this idea that after a seeing, and they weren't massive seeings for me, there were lots of little seeings that gradually built up to this deep conviction that I'm not actually anything that I've thought myself to be. So when I began to recognize what is actually going on here and why is it happening, it was with this sense that I was being asked to examine now if my identity is deepening in the self, capital S, my infinite nature. I'm going to ask to be examined, to re-examine all these places that I still believe myself to be a someone. I'm still acting like a someone, talking and thinking like a separate being. And that wasn't something I wanted to examine. It was something I was desperately trying to get away from. I only wanted to stay in the peace, in the silence. Didn't want to look at any of this stuff. The first thing to recognize about this is not happening because you're doing something wrong. I'm going to say that again because it's really important. It's happening because you're doing something right in your awakening. If your identity wasn't shifting to identifying more as the formless self, and I'm not talking about up here, I'm talking about here, where your heart is, where your love is, what your devotion is to. If that wasn't shifting already, then you wouldn't be troubled so much by these thoughts, by these emotions. If you're anything like me, these karmic patterns were more troublesome, more unbearable after waking up to the truth than before, which seems paradoxical, but because I've seen clearer and clearer what I really am, still living as what I am not, this separate being, becomes really painful, really tight, constricting, and uncomfortable. So if you're in the middle of that right now, first thing you can do for yourself is to rewrite your narrative about it. Why is this happening? Because you're succeeding. If you say, I'm doing something wrong, all this stuff's coming up, I must be doing something wrong, then you're missing a golden opportunity there to really begin to work with this stuff. It's only from seeing that you're not really separate to anything. That's the only time when you can begin to unpick and dismantle and disentangle all these thoughts about me and all these other beings, me and my finances, me and my work and all of that. You cannot really ever fully and finally untangle all of that while you still think you are that, because it feels like you're taking yourself apart. Can't really unravel our egoic structures when we think we are those. Something fights to protect them and hold on to them then. Something really wants to keep that intact and works to resist that process. So once our allegiance is switching over, this is not really what I am, then we can begin to look at this and unpick it. So the first thing, can you do that for yourself today? Can you begin to say, this is happening because I'm succeeding. This is happening because my awakening is deepening. It feels terrible when you've been in a deep place in your meditation and something suddenly has triggered some strong anger or unworthiness or fear. But does that mean that something's going wrong? Feels unpleasant. But is that the same as something going wrong? Maybe this stuff just has to come up so that you can see this is not true for me. This is not who I want to be, who I want to live as anymore. So shifting how you look at it, how you work with it, what narrative you have around this stuff coming up. Sometimes that's the only thing we need to do for these patterns to begin to, these triggers to begin to fall away. Sometimes we have to look a little deeper at the idea, the belief that we're holding on to before they go away. But that work is effortless and easy and fun when we're not holding ourselves in this energy of, I'm doing something wrong in my awakening. There's never been a single human being who has woken up to the truth of what they really are and come to fully live as that hasn't kind of gone through this crazy topsy-turvy upside down in the middle phase where I am, I've seen clearer what I am, and then suddenly all this stuff has to be looked at. Well, not suddenly because it's been coming up, but suddenly now I can effectively transcend it once and for all. And if I think I am that separate being, it feels true. If I know I'm not that separate being, it's obviously not true. So that's step number one. Step number two then is to remind yourself of that this is happening so I can finally, because I can finally release it once and for all. If you just did that one thing for yourself today and consistently, your whole awakening would change overnight. What if the next time somebody pushes a button and something comes up, you say, this feels so bad because now it's so out of alignment with what I've seen myself to be that I can't deal with it. I can't tolerate it anymore. I don't need to make it wrong. I just don't want to keep agreeing with it. And this for me was fundamental then in shifting my, this middle, not really fully being a separate being, not believing that and not fully embodying my realization yet. This was what kind of shifted that over. Just this non-judgment of myself, not drawing the wrong conclusion that I'm doing something wrong and that's why this is happening. Just looking at your day to day, whether you're just starting a day or you're at the end of it. If some emotion was to come up for you, what would be your first story about that emotion? You go and meet your friend and you get into an argument and you get really angry. Do you tell yourself that shouldn't be occurring or that something's going wrong when that happens? Yes, you'd rather not be angry, but does it mean something that you're doing something wrong? I'm repeating this because it took me a while to get this, and it's the simplest of things, but when you shift the way that you're looking at this, what if you've been so successful at your seeing, whether you realize it or not, that life and the mind is now saying, here's all the stuff that doesn't agree with what you've just seen about yourself so that you can let it go. And we're saying, I can't look at this stuff because it's evidence that I'm doing something wrong. I don't want to see it, pushing it away. You wouldn't be listening to these words right now if you weren't already in the middle of this some way, somehow. And this was perhaps the worst point of my awakening for me, was I'd seen that I wasn't that stuff. That's not who I really am. And suddenly it's right up in my face completely. So if you're going through that, then hopefully that gives you some kind of orientation to work with it more consciously. You could never do anything wrong in your awakening, ever. You can't get it wrong because you're not actually changing into your infinite formless nature. You are simply coming to see what you've always been. And as you see that more and more and more, it overrides this old programming. I have to get, I have to become, I have to release, I have to, all of that stuff. So could you remind yourself, how can you remind yourself when something gets triggered? This actually means I'm doing something right. What could you do? What emergency tool, spiritual emergency could you have, a tool to remind yourself in that moment? Because that's the moment when we need it the most, isn't it? So changing this one thing will change your entire awakening, because you'll be working through these karmic patterns from a good feeling place, from the place of watching them unfold. And instead of, when we're sure that we're doing something wrong, we'll be trying to unpick these patterns whilst we're pushing them away at the same time. Anytime that we're judging ourselves anyway feels terrible, doesn't it? But especially here in this one thing that we want so badly, we want so much, we want awakening so much, to feel that we're doing it wrong or going backwards even, although that may seem to be what's happening, couldn't be further from the truth. So, okay, so I see David has his hand up. If you, I have a couple of questions here, which I'll go to soon. But David, if you want to ask your question. Sorry, one moment, just unmuting. There we go. Right, there we go. Wonderful.
Yeah. Hi, it's so lovely to meet you.
Hi, nice to talk to you.
Yeah, so there's a quest to start experiencing pure beingness and pure awareness. And I've been at this now for about 2 years. And so what seems to be the case is when attention is put on awareness, or when, there's breath awareness and noting meditation, or any of these time-tested methods that seem to shift the physiology, what comes up is this really powerful head pain. And I've been feeling that, like doing a lot of somatic experiencing, and it's very, very slowly like starting to dissolve. But it seems to be blocking out all the peace. And so I'm wondering from you if you know of any method or tool, even I guess getting more rudimentary than self-inquiry, that can help dissolve that sort of block, in order so that I can like start resting in silence.
Well, whereabouts is it only when you're doing spiritual practice, when you're meditating, or is it other times during the day when it's happening?
I would say it's all the time, but it's definitely exacerbated during spiritual practice.
Right. And whereabouts is it in particular? Is it a certain part of your head, or is it?
Yeah. So it's like in this, like beyond, like in the center, I guess, like of the forehead area, and then also actually in the teeth. There's some trauma stored, I think.
Yeah. So one of the simplest things you can do is shifting your practice. So here's your body telling you that you have some resistance to seeing deeper, or some old belief. Your body's giving you this sign. Whether it is, sometimes our mind will manifest this pain to stop us looking deeper, because it's kind of, don't go any deeper. Sometimes it is showing us some kind of karmic pattern that we need to look at. But just simply, if you haven't already, first of all, I suggest just asking this pain, what is it trying to show you? So it's a different approach to, most times when something like this happened for me, I would just try to meditate harder and longer and sort of push right through it. It's just how I was. And of course that didn't work. It just, got more intense. So instead of running away from it, you can run towards it and say, what is it you want to tell me? And if it is simply resistance, mind trying to stop you go deeper, it will disappear when you ask that. But if it's something that needs to be looked at, then it will come up to show you. You might notice if you really sort of, instead of trying to avoid it, when the pain comes, the best that you can, and that's whatever that is in that moment, listening to that pain and seeing also if there's some kind of emotion that comes with it, because any karmic pattern has a mental, some thoughts, an emotional component, and a physical component. So that could be something in our body like pain, or it could be something in our world, our experience, a relationship, something like that. Sometimes there's a subtle emotion hiding behind the pain.
So I've done a lot of work, like you talk about, to communicate with it and listening to it. That, to be honest, hasn't really helped very much. What to address, yeah. So going toward it. So when I feel the pain physically, right, like somatic experience, or I guess maybe sometimes gentle noticing, there's a like you said, there's a lot of emotional trauma that seems to be surfacing, and so that's like led to a lot of like dark night type of overwhelming, debilitating sensations. So the part of me, I think the resistance here is there's like an unknowing if that could happen again, or if there needs to like, or like how intense I guess it can get. So if you were me, would you simply just feel the pain all day and trust that no matter what comes up, I'm always safe? Or do you think there is an actual danger in like there being too much overwhelm, like emotional overwhelm?
I think it's probably both. So the more gentle you can be with the pain while it's happening, the better, because you're not resisting it. So resistance, suffering and physical pain are two different things. We can be in physical pain and not resisting it, as I'm sure you might have experienced. If we take a painkiller or have an anesthetic, pain's still there, we're just not pushing against it. So you can do that consciously. But I would be more interested at this point in, rather than trying to get rid of the pain, looking at the overwhelm of emotion that comes up. So as much as you can, and as much as you feel safe to, just to look at the emotion that is trying to tell you something. So for me, with physical pain, there was a deep fear that came with it, a real deep fear that I was going to be engulfed by it, overwhelmed by it, not able to cope with it. And also the same feeling came about the emotion itself. If I really open these gates, the floodgates, this emotion, it's just going to completely overwhelm me, and I won't ever be able to close it again. Some kind of feeling.
Just to give you a little context, so I've been doing a lot of like releasing techniques and methods, like many hours a day now for almost a year. So it was really shocking to me, but surprising, it just sort of took me more into the mind. Like it released a lot of conditioning, but it didn't really.
You can get to a point where it's counterproductive, can't you? Very quickly to do a lot of releasing things. It just get to a point where your mind will start to make stuff up to release. So been there, done that. But
okay. So.
But what's the emotion? What's the emotion that comes when the pain's there? There might be several.
I would say, yeah, like grief specifically, it's surrounding like attachment anxiety, like fearful avoidant type attachment anxiety.
So just setting aside the physical pain, when obviously it's there, but just going into the grief feeling now with me here, the best that you can. If grief had a mouth and a voice, what would it want to tell you? Not about the pain, not about anything. Just if it was just a person called grief, what would its story be? What would it want to say to you?
Interpersonal love is not safe, or it's not dependable.
So you could see why that kind of idea would really mirror as this deep grief, and this sense that going deeper into this love that I am, it is a dangerous thing to do. That's going to come with a real sadness, because it's the only thing we really want by this point, isn't it? Is to kind of wake up to this. And then the idea is so anti what we really are, that anti this great love, that it resonates as intense physical pain. It can come up as quite a strong physical pain. So the bigger the vibrational gap between the idea that we're actually experiencing and the love that we really are, the worse the body suffers from that. And this idea that going deeper into this love is a really bad idea. That's about as opposite as you can get from reality, isn't it? If you look at it, it's probably the safest thing we can do. But some part of our egoic mind still is holding on to this one. So you can, now you've got that idea from the grief. Now the grief has shown you that you've got kind of got this sense of what it's really about. You can begin to question that then. Not in a denial way, just, is that actually true? There's been an assumption inside me that going further into this is unsafe. But I'd just like to actually go beyond this assumption and actually see. Just, I'm curious. You don't even have to go further. I just would like to know rather than assume. Can you get a sense of it? So we've called it contemplation. It's
so
just
specifically the thought that was mentioned, like interpersonal love is not safe or it's not dependable. So to ask that if that thought is true or not, or untrue.
Yeah. You feel something inside really, really agrees with that and buys it. Something, some small part of our egoic sense of self, our old definition of ourself. So the way to come out of that is just to gently question, well, is it true actually? I'm not going to force anything to stop believing because you can't, but I can gently ask if this is true. And then as you do this without any expectations, you're just, every time you ask this question, you can do it like a meditation. Every time the pain comes, it can be a reminder to go back to this question. And you'll find that gradually you might never get an answer that says actually it's completely safe to do this. You don't need that kind of answer. The answer that we'll find is that the grief dissipates and the physical pain goes too, because you feel safer, your body relaxes, the pain goes. You mentioned like tension and things like that. Yeah.
So you're asked, so the question is it true? Or like noticing the aspect of the mind that agrees with that thought or believes in it.
Yeah.
And then, so how is the thought unbelieved in? Like what can be done to unbelieve the thought?
Simply to question if it's true. To question if something is true is the polar opposite of automatically believing it. Yeah. It's not a forceful thing. It's just a kind of a gentle, is this actually true? I've spent so much of my life feeling unsafe, totally unsafe. And coming back to the self, it was the only thing I wanted, but something inside was really saying, this is not a good idea. And so, okay, instead of only listening to that voice, I want to actually just find out myself, you know, and to question that just gently. I'd question it every time the emotion came up, all the physical pain, when I remembered. And you're just breaking this habit then to automatically agree with this thought. If you don't question it, you're automatically giving your consent for it to kind of, so you can't question that something's true and believe it at the same time.
Well, so like right now, for example, I'm curious, like maybe you can guide me through it so I understand at least once.
Yeah.
So because right now I
Absolutely.
noticed, thank you. Thank you so much. So I noticed that part of me that agrees with the idea or the belief. And
Yeah.
I can also question like, okay, like am I willing to discard that assumption or that belief? But I still feel that like acidic sensation or counterpart to the grief in
Let's just
that.
stay with this question then. Let's just say, is it really true it's not safe to go deep? What question do you feel is right? Is it true it's not safe to go deeper, or what feels right for you, the question?
Is it true, or like to depend on another person for love feels, or even for like safety feels, feels unsafe or feels, yeah.
So let's just stay with that then. Is it true that it's unsafe to depend on someone else, you know, to feel love? Is that really, that's been our experience probably a lot of times, but maybe it's been our experience because this idea has been there. So as we begin to question that, let's just sit with this question, you and me, and you can just tell me any and all answers that come. So answers are going to be thoughts, obviously. Your mind will try to answer this question. There might be some emotions that come up as an answer, some physical. I noticed your jaw, it feels tight. If you hear a dog barking outside when you ask the question, that's an answer too. We're not going to, if you get an itch on your foot, that's an answer. So we're just going to throw it, or can hear the clock ticking, that's another answer. We're not looking, because the thing that we do usually is only listen to the mind's ideas. That's the only answer we take. And we block out the rest of what's going on.
I read your methodological description of self-inquiry, and I noticed it was inverted. Like what I'd previously done is I'd ask, what am I? And then anything that would arise, I would negate it. Like, that thought is not me. This is not me.
Not that.
Yeah. And so,
and that's a very valid way. That way worked for me as well. There was also a time when this way worked better for me, when coming this inclusive way through contemplation worked better for me when it came to transcending these ideas that were really showing up in my life and my body. So let's just ask this question inside, see what happens. And it might be that nothing happens for a while. It's okay if we just sit here quietly. And anybody else that wants to ask this too can ask at the same time. It's a very common idea, this, isn't it? It's just when any answer comes, whether it's a sound or a sensation or a thought or an emotion, just letting us know what's going on. And again, every now and again, just reminding yourself of the question, is it really true? Something
like, is it true that I'm not safe?
Yeah, if that's what feels like it's resonating right now, then absolutely go with that.
Is it really true that I'm not safe?
And can you feel the difference in the tone here? It's like, is it really true? It's like a curiosity, an openness. I don't want to be run by this assumption anymore. I want to just go a little deeper here into my actuality rather than assumption. Because we're just going to open it up then and go beyond this belief. So what happens in your body when you ask this question?
Yeah, so a thought is arising that it's believed to be a memory. And so there's sort of this seeing of like all the times that I just felt like debilitated in this dark night, and like people weren't there to fully support me in the way that I felt like I needed it.
So this memory comes up, whatever answer comes, whether it's intense bliss as an answer or a negative emotion or a dog barking, we're not going to judge them. There's no right or wrong answers. We're just going to stay with the question. Thank you for that answer. That's valid too. And we're going to stay with the question. We're not fixating on anything in particular. Everything's allowed, but we're going to stay with that question. Yeah.
Would you recommend some sort of noting, like, so thank you, or like, you're valid?
If you want to, yeah. The most important thing is not to lose the question. Just coming back to the question, whatever answer comes in that. Okay. Of course, your mind is going to give you an answer that agrees, yes, it's true, it's not safe. Of course, that will be the first thing mind says, because it's trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you safe, and that's why it's saying that. So just staying with this question and seeing what else comes up. Any other answers to this question? Is it really true, actually, that I'm not safe? I'm just kind of want to see, just want to see.
Is it really true that I'm not safe?
Yeah.
Yeah, now there's like a feeling, this acidic sensation in the body.
Yeah. Just letting that be. Yeah, letting that be. That's another kind of answer, isn't it? We're not going to label any as good or bad. Some may be more pleasant answers than others, and some more unpleasant, but I'll just let it happen. And staying with this question.
Is it true that I'm not? Yeah, no, there's like a sensation of the lips.
Okay.
Would you still like me to keep informing you when every time there's an?
Yeah, just see what's happening. How does your body feel overall when you ask a question? Overall, is it more relaxed or less relaxed when you're asking?
A little more relaxed, but
Hmm.
I also, there's an assumption that it's just like receiving a transmission from you.
Yeah, yeah.
And if your presence was
So
to go
there's
away,
another thought answer, right? Oh, it's only because I'm talking to Helen. Yeah, and it's fine. It's an answer. It's a thought. It's okay. And we just stay
Hmm.
with the question: is this really true? I'm not safe.
Is it really true that I'm not safe?
Yeah. We're
Yeah,
just
no,
opening a space here to actually stay with this question. That's all we're doing, isn't it? We're not doing anything. We're just being with this question together, seeing what happens. You don't have to make
yeah.
anything happen.
Hmm. Now there's a sensation at the like heel of my right foot.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's an answer. Valid answer. Is it really true that I'm not safe?
Mm. Doing great.
Hmm. Yeah, now there's actually like a pleasant or soothing warmth
Yeah.
kind of like on inside the torso.
It's another
Yeah, it
kind of
feels,
answer. Yeah. Nice, pleasant
yeah.
answer. Yeah. So as we're staying with this question, you might begin to notice that the answers that are coming are more of the positive, what we would label positive in the mind. Nicer thoughts, nicer emotions, nicer sensations overall, but that's not why we're doing it. But just the act of asking, we're not believing this in this moment. Can't be believing it as we're sitting with this question. And your body begins to kind of respond to that, doesn't it? Just kind of feel a little bit more chilled out, feel a little bit more. And it becomes quite a pleasant thing to do just in itself, to sit with a question. And for me, I had to sit with this question several times because it was a very, very well believed idea that I wasn't safe.
I'm curious, just to ask one question about this process. So if
Yeah.
the like a thought comes up as an answer, like as an answer to the question, like, no, I'm not safe. And that thought comes up recurring, and every time I repeat the question, it's just the same recurring answer. Um, is there a way out of that stuck pattern?
The way out of it is not to try to, that's just another answer. It's not a bad or unwanted answer. It's just as welcome as the thought. The thought might come at some point, I'm absolutely safe. I've always been safe. Some kind of knowing. But that isn't the right answer, just as the thought, I'm not safe, is the wrong answer. We're not going to label it that way. So we're actually being the question. We're being this open question here. That's all we're doing. We're not trying to get rid of anything. We're not trying to change anything. And ironically, doing that, something begins to shift slowly at first, but it kind of gathers a momentum. You can probably feel something happening in the body, right? Just sitting here like this. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it really true that I'm not safe?
And just asking the question, every time you ask, you're undoing your ability to believe this thought. In any moment, we're either believing it or questioning it, and you can't do both at the same time, literally. So just
Yeah.
staying with the question, seeing what happens. Let's just sit with it for a couple more minutes.
Okay. So now there's a pain sensation in the teeth. That's an answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it really
And
true that
go ahead, sorry. Yeah.
is it really true that I'm not safe?
Just, do you remember when you were a child and I once went to see my granddad, and he had this he was working on the engine of his car, and I was looking at this engine. I was fascinated by how it works. I wanted to get inside and take it all apart. There's like a real deep curiosity as a child. How does this work? What's this about? And that's kind of trying to bring this energy back to this contemplation here. Is it actually true? Like a child would look at, is this actually true? Actually, some kind of, I really would just like to see, actually. It's a lightness
Now
about it.
there's like a sort of this hollow space behind the eyes that
Yeah.
feels, I think this is maybe the beginning of what people are calling consciousness. Yeah, so I almost like when I look at you, I actually forgot like where I was or who I was talking to.
Yeah. And you probably didn't know whether you were talking or listening, or can't be bothered to find out. Yeah. In that moment. So
Yeah.
here's another type of answer of the self, the consciousness. At some point we notice who we really are in this kind of contemplation, our real nature. And again, it might show itself as silence, the stillness, beingness, presence, whatever we're calling it, consciousness. It's not the right answer either. It's just another answer, just as welcome as all the rest. You see, we see what we're doing here. It's just, okay, that's here too. Yeah.
Oh, so it's like, because it's only the mind or the ego that would like value it
This
higher
one's
than like
better. This one is the right answer. And this pain
uh
is the wrong. You see, the moment we do that, we've kind of fixated on one particular answer. And that's what actually makes the body very tense. What we're actually learning to do here is just to stay open. Whatever
yeah,
comes up in our experience is just an
yeah.
answer.
I hope you take this as a compliment, but you look really big right now. Like or like everything kind of looks really like yeah, big.
I'm actually kind of tiny in physical form, so I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like it kind of, so yeah, I guess it's another answer. Like it feels like I'm kind of this ant that could be squashed by it. Yeah, it feels like things are big now, spacious. Is it really true that I'm not safe?
So one last thing before we wrap this up, but I would suggest doing this by yourself. You can watch the
Mhm.
recording again on YouTube when it's on there. Practicing it when the pain isn't overwhelming or the emotion isn't overwhelming, so that you've got a handle, you feel confident asking the question when you need to. Then you're not kind of trying to do it in the middle of a big emotion. But one last thing is just to stay with this. We're not trying to get rid of the pain. We're not trying to get rid of the negative emotion or the belief. Those things will happen as a byproduct, a side effect of asking the question, but that's not the goal. Can you feel we're just doing this because it feels nice? Kind of get more and more chilled out the longer we ask a question.
Yeah, yeah, I feel much better right now.
And kind of the only thing that's different between your body and mine now is that that's become a habit for me. I'm just kind of always like, energetically somehow, just open instead of believing. I had to go through the exact same thing that you're going through with fear, with guilt, with anger, other stuff, desperation. Just one emotion at a time. I looked at the story and then I asked if it was true. And I asked every time it came up. And it became such a lovely thing to do because you're not at odds with anything. You're including everything in your experience. You're also not believing those thoughts at the same time. And there's a sense of freedom then in that, isn't there? Openness.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. This is a really it's very, very helpful. Thank you so much for your
Very
yeah,
welcome. Thank
guidance.
you for being such a
Yeah.
good example of this, because everyone has a struggle with this. This one in particular for me was huge. I'm not safe. It was playing
Mm,
everywhere in my life, in my body, everywhere, so it was really nice to let it go. Just this
yeah.
openness, just staying
So
with the
whatever,
simplicity.
so whatever emotion comes up, questioning like what would the emotion say? What's its story? Like its victim
On
story, I guess.
Yeah, on some idea from separation. On my website, helenhamilton.org, there's a free teaching section, and there's a list of common negative emotions that we feel and the story that comes from that. So guilt would say, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me. Anger would say, I'm blocked, I'm limited, I can't get what I want. Grief would say, I've lost something that I really need, I can't get it back. So it's worthwhile asking the question yourself, finding what your statement is, but as a pointer to what might come up, you can look at that list on there. And most people, it's really only sort of guilt, anger, and fear. Those are the three biggies that come up for us all, aren't they? So
Hmm.
well done, well
Yeah.
done.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Good to talk to you. Thank you. Okay, Melissa. So we'll take Melissa and then we'll talk to Persis, and then we'll leave it there for today. Sorry, Melissa, when you're ready. I actually can't hear you, sorry. I'm not laughing at you, Melissa. I just remember this is a manifestation of one of your patterns last time. Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go to Persis first. If you're ready, we'll come back to you, Melissa. Hopefully we can get the issue sorted out. Okay, so Persis, when you're ready. Hi.
Hi, Helen. Hi.
Good to talk to you.
Hi. I'm trying to explain something I barely understand.
Okay.
So I had this huge frustration with myself going into really intense obsession about getting the best laptop. And I spent about 30 hours and I could just have bought the most expensive one and save me all that time. Like, it was ridiculous. But I had such an intense frustration with myself, and I always really disliked self-inquiry because it never gave me an experience. It was just thoughts and nothing there. But I think I used this frustration to really go there.
Yeah, good.
And I did get this sense of I don't exist. And like the classical eyeball in space turning around, seeing nothing, and also like a realization, me as the eyeball is also not real. Like this point of consciousness, the observer is not the real me. And I was remembering like I fainted one time. And when I woke up again, I became so angry. I threw my bike on the ground in the middle of the street. And I now can see I was so angry because I noticed there was an absence of me for a little while. And like the frustration of, I can never go there. Like, I can never experience or observe pure awareness. But there was awareness, like noticing the sense of I was absent.
Yeah.
But there's such a divide in my, I think that there's like a wall, and I can never go there. I will always have this sense of separate me, or at least I'm this point of consciousness and of being and of presence, all of that, but pure awareness, like that void, like I can never reach that. And it, like all the emotions it brought up, like the anger and the laughing and excitement as well, like such a relief and sadness and all of it. I felt like this is so useless because it's happening in a void.
Yeah.
So
it's a little
can just
crazy making,
enjoy,
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I can enjoy like feeling like a separate self and just the sense of being. But even the allowing is just like mimicking. I don't know. I don't know where to go from here. So do you have any advice?
So when you first taste that absoluteness about yourself, that which just is, you've called it pure awareness, you called it kind of void, as in void of form, void of substance. As that really kind of sinks in, that's what is behind all of this and inside all of this, it has this effect of it highlights all the places that our ego is trying to do something. So if this is what I really am, and it's always been here and it always will be here, and it doesn't actually care what my mind is doing or my ego is doing, then all of my ego's attempts to get to it, to merge into it, to become it, to deserve it, to earn it, to find it, all of these kind of subtle ways that we're continuing the story of evolution and becoming, they're kind of suddenly highlighted, aren't they? Something goes, for me, there was this tantrum. I had this massive tantrum inside. It wasn't pretty at all. But something was like, well, what's the point of all of this then? If This is
Yeah,
always
exactly.
here. Yeah. What
Yeah,
am I
yeah.
doing all this for? Why am I in satsang?
Mhm.
Why am I trying to do self-inquiry? Why am I even asking this question? You know, the awareness doesn't really care about any of that, does it? But to take it that little step deeper, you said, I don't exist. So I don't exist as a separate being, but I do exist as this pure awareness already, right? Are you with me so far?
Mhm.
Or do you want to back up a little bit?
Sorry,
look-
what do you say?
When I look for a separate being, I can't find one. And I
Mhm.
find, well, what do you find? Let's do it right now. When you look for a separate being, can you find one? What do you find?
Mm. No, it's just the awareness and the sense of presence, I think.
So no separate being. I don't exist as that, but I do exist as this that is, as the awareness. I am this awareness because I can't find anyone living in it. I can't find a separate being who's trying to merge into it even. And this deepened for me. It became a realization that the one who's asking the question, the one who's doing the self-inquiry, the one who's showing up to satsang is the awareness. It may sound
Yeah.
really weird to say. Awareness
Yeah.
comes to satsang to learn about itself, but it nonetheless is what's occurring, isn't it? Can you?
Mm.
So why am I doing all this? Well, it might not be to reach the awareness like I previously thought, or even merge into it, but it might be that the awareness is wanting to understand itself more, to get to see itself clearer, to value itself more, to see itself clearer. On one level, that sounds completely stupid because it is as it is and it's never changed. It doesn't want anything. But when it shows up as a human being, it does want something. It wants to recognize itself, and it wants that so much. So maybe sit with this kind of idea, this question, if it works for you. What is doing the self-inquiry then? Just had this epiphany that I don't really exist as a separate being. What's had that epiphany? And what has been doing all of this spiritual work anyway? Then was it really my ego? Or was it something else? And for me, that just kind of shifted the whole anger and for this kind of intense frustration and anger that was there. To the ego, it's a disaster because there's nowhere else for it to try to get to. To the awareness, it's an opening. I've been trying to recognize myself and I'm starting to see that now. Do you feel a difference in the way you feel when you look at it that way?
Yeah, but it's, yeah.
Is
So
there
it's still like, there is still a goal.
a goal, but rather than trying to get somewhere where you don't think you are now, some point in the future where I finally am the awareness or something like that, the goal becomes, how much deeper can I go into what I already am? How much clearer can I see this? It's a kind of diving deeper into this moment rather than trying to get somewhere. Can you feel the difference? Same energy, same movement, but it's kind of turning inwards to look at itself.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to get to some imaginary awakening point down the road where I'm finally enlightened, according to ego.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yeah.
I was listening to Ramana Maharshi and no, Nisargadatta, another one. Like staying with the sense of I am, in the end it will leave you. The sense of I am. Is that like
That's what's just
the
happened.
highest focus for the I am, to realize it's not real, or
to realize what's saying I in I am. We start off I am, feeling I am this separate being. But over the course of the inquiry and staying with it, what we mean by I is changing, isn't it? So what you mean when you say I am, when you say I am, it's really the universe saying I am, and it's powerful. It's a statement of isness, of fact, I am. And it's very different. So as far as I understand, what was meant by that is the personal, the separate I am leaves, which you just experienced when you had that. You couldn't find it, it's gone. All that remains, and in fact, all that's ever been there is this, I don't really like the word impersonal because it kind of sounds cold, but this universal I, this infinite I. I think you really know the answer to that anyway. You just wanted to double check, right?
Yeah, I'm still not totally clear. Like, should I? It still feels like a separate self, but should I, as I feel like the separate self, should I copy like the attitude of pure awareness, detachment, love, or should I look at maybe both? Like, should look at myself and see.
Can you still hear me? I think I've lost you there.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I were you, if I were in your position right now, I would spend as much time as I could focusing on what it really means that you can't find a separate self at all, that all you've found is the infinite self. What does that mean then? What remains for me to do now? Now that I've seen that, how does that change how I'm coming to my practice? How does that change my orientation in my spirituality? I would put that top of the pile of things. I've had this seeing, but it'd be easy for me to just go back into egoic ways of trying to get somewhere with this seeing, trying to use it for something. So what does it really mean? Where else is there left for you to go now? What's left for you to do? Here's a right now question.
Yeah.
What remains for you to do spiritually now? I don't mean to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer right now, but here's a
No. I'm just I think more into realizing or neutral looking, or however you want to. Yeah.
I might not have actually seen the full impact of what it means that there isn't a separate self, and there never was. I might not have fully imbibed yet what it means that I've always been the universal self. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Good to talk to you again. Melissa, fingers crossed. I can see you're on a different device. This is like what happened 6 months ago or something.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yay. Wonderful. Yeah.
I'm really good at manifesting what I don't want.
Yeah. And then turning it around. Yeah. Yeah.
So I've been kind of realizing when you've done like even with Awakening Together yesterday and doing a little bit of like that self-inquiry and looking to see, is there really a person here?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've done that many, many times, and I've seen, like, I know I'm not a thing. And you said even yesterday, and I'm sure you said it before, it's like, okay, so you've seen that. What does that mean? Yeah. And then I just get stuck. What does that mean? Because it's like, okay, I'm seeing that I'm not a thing. I'm seeing that I have no boundary. I'm spacious. I'm everywhere. I'm everything. Yet I'm still back into being a person, back into karmic patterns and suffering. And so it's like, when I get to that question that you asked, I just so wanted you to just answer it, because I was like, I'm so stuck.
Would you just not stop there? Actually tell me more. Yeah, just stop.
Yeah. Yes. Tell me more.
So, what does it mean then? Because if I've seen that I am effortless and formless and everywhere, and that seems so real and clear and true, and then the very next moment I find that I'm stuck in illusion, some old idea or something, and I find myself trying to get back to that clearer seeing, It might be that this is showing me some subtle way that I'm holding on to some old idea. So to make it really as clear as possible, if you find that your attention has gone to thoughts and you're having a horrible experience because of that, what would our egoic sense of self do in that moment? It would probably desperately scrabble to try to get away from that back to the self, to the awareness, to the consciousness. What would the awareness or the self or the consciousness do about it?
It would just watch it. There'd be nothing to do.
So in that moment where you find yourself completely kind of drawn in, and maybe some tension in the body, some crazy thoughts going on, some real strong emotion, something, what's the knee-jerk response? Is it to try to fix something about yourself as if something's gone wrong? Or can we then upgrade our knee-jerk response to be, it's fine? It doesn't feel pleasant, but it's fine. I don't have to go into some old way about it. So this question of what does it really mean that I'm not a separate being is kind of pointing at, have I seen that in all these places? What do I do? What do I still try to do to get out of suffering? Or am I still trying to transcend karmic patterns instead of just kind of seeing this is an idea, as we were doing with David, this is an idea that's really kind of shown up in my body, shown up in my emotions, but it's not true. That's the seeing, not doing, isn't it? I'm just seeing these answers come up and these things. If you give fear to the ego, it will put its work boots on and its cap and roll up its sleeves. What can we do about this? So just looking at that, can you see there might be places where you're still trying to make some effort to get away from a particular situation?
Everywhere.
Only everywhere, I guess, like it was for me. Yeah. Only everywhere. But the good news about that is it's one simple idea, isn't it? That once you get it, it takes effect in all of your life at the same time. So it's never been my job to come back out of illusion. That was the huge thing that hit me. It's never been my job, actually. My attention goes to some old thoughts about separation, unworthiness, something, whatever it is, some emotion, some horrible experience that the body's having or something. And I can either do one or two things. I can lovingly watch that, or I can usually try to dig my way out of it, apply lots of effort to try to get away from it back to that pure watching. So is there any amount of effort that can get you back into just watching? In fact, the efforting in itself is like standing in a still lake, splashing your arms around and then wondering why there's ripples on this. Why isn't it still, you know? And I've done that so many times. But this one idea hung on so tightly for me that I noticed, here I go again trying to fix something. And it seems very counterintuitive to just let that play out when I'm lost in illusion, to just go with it. Everything inside me was going, this is wrong. You shouldn't, you have to do something. But if we're going to be the self in that moment, what would the self do? Nothing. Could it do anything? Not really. And
No,
that
so
kind of a deeper, that's really what it means, isn't it? Where am I still efforting? Where am I still trying? Where am I still becoming?
yeah, because it's right back into that feeling like a separate person that needs to do something. I mean,
Yeah.
what I've started to do is kind of question, well, where is the person? Where is the person that's feeling fear or anger or whatever, right? And so that kind of brings me back to, well, they're not here, like that doesn't exist. But in a
That's
way,
great.
yeah.
But then if we immediately go back into the very next moment, okay,
Yeah.
I've lost that clear seeing. How do I get back to it? We will immediately switch back into ego.
Mhm.
And it feels very counterproductive to go, I've lost that clear seeing. Okay, I'll just wait for it to come back. Because I'll have a field day with that one. Like, you're crazy? How are you supposed to get back to peace by doing nothing. Like, have you seen my life? Have you seen my emotions? Have you seen my finances? Have you seen my house? You know, something obviously has to be done. You know, that's the idea, isn't it? To change something. So trying that has not really worked. So can we a different approach? What would the self do here? Or for me, the question that really helped them was, what would love do here? Same thing, but just a different word really helped me sort of slide into it. What would love do? Would it really be trying hard to get out of this experience I'm having? Or would it be really deeply curious as to what this illusion is that I'm experiencing? And mind doesn't want to do this because it says if you just do nothing when you get caught in illusion, you'll stay there forever. That's the myth, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't fight to get out of illusion, you'll stay there forever. But the more you struggle, the faster you sink into it.
Yes.
Have you seen that section? I've been watching the Harry Potter movies again with my daughter. That I forgot what it's called, but when they just stop, they get caught in these vines, they just stop struggling, they sink straight through.
Yeah.
When they're trying to get out of them, they're having a really hard time. That's what we're doing.
That's a really great analogy.
So
Yeah.
has that answered the question? Have I gone?
Yes,
have I
because
gone
yes, because when I have seen that I'm not a thing, and I experience that, then to it kind of gives me a place, I guess, to go, because I think what I was doing is still looking at it from, even when I say the word self, I'm not then recognizing that it's a no thing. I think I'm still seeing it in duality. So I just think, yes,
it's very, very literally how you bring this into your life. What do I do the next time an emotion comes up? What do I do the next time I run out of money? I mean, physically, if you need to do things, obviously, but or there's something going on in the body. But spiritually, what do I do? And there's a point where you just go, I'm not going to do anything about this, because I know what happens when I try to play with this. It goes on endlessly, doesn't it? Because you've never done anything ever anyway. You never successfully came back out of illusion. Attention just shifted and you went back to feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this huge, great myth that all these times I got myself out of the illusion, you know, by doing all these practices.
Yeah, and I find that even sometimes contemplation doesn't work for me. Like it just,
because it's done by the ego. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I do this, I'm going to get back out of suffering, back to peace.
Yeah.
But as we did with David there, I'm just doing it because it's fun to ask a question, or because I can't suffer when I'm asking the question, if that's more available in that moment.
Yeah.
For no other reason. I'm not trying to transcend this karmic pattern. I'm not trying to get rid of fear. I'm not trying to change my thoughts. I'm just asking the question because it feels, or I'm just meditating because that's what's happening, or I'm just self-inquiring because that's what seems to be going on right now. That's the only reason for I ever do anything ever, you know, any time now, is I like it, I enjoy it, it's fun, and it seems to be what seems to want to happen in this moment. No other reason. It'd be easy to say I'm doing satsang here so that I can help everyone with their challenges, but I know what happens when I believe that one. Get a very sticky mess. I'm just doing it because it's fun. Yeah.
No, very helpful. Thank
Literally
you.
bringing the effortlessness into these very ordinary, everyday situations.
Yes.
Just be unemployed and unemployable spiritually. See what happens.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Your mind will freak out big time. Absolutely. But just you can't do nothing.
Very good. Thank you, Helen.
Glad we got to talk finally. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So wonderful. Okay. So thank you all for your contribution and your sharings, and what a wonderful way to bring it all to a close today. So, thank you. Namaste.